My name is James Ellison. I'm 32 years old, a senior financial analyst based in Chicago, and a few days ago, I got a text message from my parents that simply read, "You're not invited for Christmas this year. Vanessa wants it to just be the core family." No punctuation, no greeting, not even my name. Just that. I didn't respond with anger. I didn't plead or ask why. I typed 5 words. "Okay, talk to my lawyer." Then I set my phone down, took a breath that felt colder than the air outside, and walked into my kitchen where the morning sun was hitting the countertop like it always did, ordinary, still insultingly normal. Except nothing was normal. Because what that message really meant was, you're no longer useful, you're cut, and after 12 years, over $520,000 of silent support, and a lifetime of swallowing my own needs for theirs, they decided I didn't fit their picture of a perfect family anymore. So here I am, telling you this. If you've ever felt like an ATM with a heartbeat, if you've ever been cut out by your own blood just because you stopped playing their game, hit that like button, drop a comment, even just a single dot, to say I've been there. And most of all, subscribe, because this isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a blueprint for taking your power back. But first, let me take you back to where it all began. The text came in on a Sunday morning, cold, gray, with the kind of damp air that seeps into your bones. I was already halfway through my usual coffee at the Daily Grind, a neighborhood spot I'd been going to with my family for over a decade. Worn vinyl booths, smell of burnt espresso and overworked milk frother. Same corner seat by the window, same ritual. Except this time, when I saw them walk in, my parents, Richard and Eleanor, and my younger brother Mark, they didn't smile. No wave, just 3 figures moving stiffly through the doorway, bundled in coats, the same way people bundle themselves against conversations they don't want to have. They slid into the booth across from me without a word. I nodded. Mark barely looked up from his phone. My father cleared his throat, that signature move of his. Always the prelude to something unpleasant. "We've already discussed this. James," he said flatly, "you won't be coming for Christmas." The words didn't hit me right away. They just floated there for a second, unregistered. I turned to my mother, hoping stupidly. I admit that this was some kind of off-brand joke, but she just busied herself adjusting her scarf, her eyes never meeting mine. "It's just, Vanessa needs her space," she murmured. "You know, with little Tyler in the new house, she wants it to feel intimate, just the core family." The core family. Those 2 words punched harder than anything else, because here's what they left out. That new house, I helped buy it. Tyler's preschool tuition, I paid for it the first year. Mark's business that never turned profit, I quietly bailed it out. Twice. So if I wasn't the core, what the hell was I? Then came Mark, finally looking up from his screen, wearing that smug little grin I'd grown to associate with him getting away with something. "Besides, man," he said, leaning in like we were sharing a joke, "Tyler's only 2. It's not like he'd remember if you were there anyway." And that was the last straw. Not the exclusion, not the lack of thanks. It was the erasure, that casual dismissal of my presence like I was furniture that could be moved or replaced, like I was optional. I felt heat rise up my neck, but right before I could speak, something in me shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness. It was clarity. Cold and clean, like lake water in January. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a crisp $20 bill, and laid it on the table. "For the coffees you were about to order," I said quietly. Then I stood up, slid on my coat, and walked out into the Chicago wind. I didn't look back. The walk home was short, but it felt infinite. The city I'd lived in for years suddenly looked unfamiliar, like I was seeing it without illusion for the first time. I didn't turn on the lights when I entered my apartment, didn't play music, just sat in the semi-darkness. Replay, rewind, freeze frame. The look on Mark's face, the way my mom clutched her scarf like it was a shield, my father's deadpan delivery, like announcing a tax adjustment. The rage didn't come, but something else did. Resolve. I got up, went to my desk, opened my laptop, new file, Excel sheet, title overdue investments, and I started typing. Mortgage payments, startup loans, emergency funds for dad's dental work, mom's minor surgery, Vanessa's student loan that somehow became my responsibility. Tab by tab, line by line, I built a story, my story, 12 years of giving. No interest charged, no invoices, just expectations, just assumed compliance. But not anymore. I stared at the total $520, $142.68. Then I picked up my phone. Not to call my parents, not to text Mark. I scrolled to the contact I hadn't used in years, Michael Davies, real estate attorney. The man who once helped me close on a lake cabin up in Wisconsin, a place I'd saved for, dreamed of, and ultimately offered to the family as our legacy. A cabin that suddenly became theirs the moment it became useful. The phone rang twice. "Michael," I said, my voice steady in a way I didn't recognize. "It's James Ellison. I need to talk, urgently." I didn't know it then, but that one phone call would trigger a chain reaction so sharp, so irreversible it would leave my parents stunned, my brother scrambling, and a cabin by the lake, sold out from under them before they even saw it coming. Because I wasn't just pulling away. I was pulling the plug, and the fallout. That was only just beginning. Michael didn't ask many questions. He never did. That's what I liked about him. We met once for coffee that week, neutral ground. No emotion, just paperwork and strategy. He wore the same navy blazer he always did, carried the same brown leather briefcase that looked like it had survived the Reagan administration. His voice was clipped, calm, deliberate. "So," he said, flipping open a folder with practiced precision, "we're talking full financial severance. All assets untangled." I nodded. "Everything, every account, every automatic payment? I want no more strings." Michael gave a small approving grunt. "Smart, clean, permanent. You'll need to send them formal revocation notices. I can draft those." I sipped my coffee, still hot and too bitter. "What about the cabin?" He looked up. "Whose name is on the deed?" "Mine, only mine." "Then it's yours," he said simply, as if he were discussing dry cleaning. "You want to keep it?" I stared past him. Out the window, the memory came back uninvited. Dad chopping wood in flannel sleeves rolled up. Mom baking cinnamon bread in that cramped kitchen. Mark setting up a bonfire like he actually knew how to light one. We called it our legacy retreat, except only one of us paid for it. Only one of us sacrificed to make it happen. I shook my head. "No, I want it gone." Michael raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. He just jotted something down and said, "All right, I'll contact a realtor in the area. Discreet." It was done, or at least set in motion. That night, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old shoebox from the back of my closet. Inside were little fragments of a time when I thought I belonged. Family photos, cheap souvenirs from vacations I paid for but never got thanked for, and at the bottom, folded neatly, a Christmas card from my mom. "James, we're so proud of you. You've always been our rock. Love, Mom and Dad." It was dated December 2011, right after I landed my first six-figure bonus, right before the small loan requests started coming in. I held the card for a while. My thumb traced the curve of her handwriting, and then I stood, walked to the kitchen, struck a match, and dropped the card into the sink. It curled, blackened, and vanished. No drama, just ashes. You might be wondering, how did it get this bad? How does a son become disposable to his own family? The answer is quiet, gradual, like mold in a basement spreading while you're too busy cleaning upstairs. It started with good intentions. A check here, a wire transfer there. Dad needed dental work. I sent $4,800. Mom's car broke down. Another $6,200. Mark had a business idea, then a second one, then a third. I funded them all, because I could. And because I thought, this is what family does. They never demanded anything outright. That's the thing guilt doesn't shout. It whispers. We hate to ask. "Honey, you've always been so responsible. Just until we get back on our feet." By the time I looked up, I was their safety net, their backup plan, their talking line of credit. And still, I clung to the hope that one day, they'd see me, not for what I gave but for who I was. That day never came. A week after my meeting with Michael, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Stan. Stan Kowalski, my father's longtime golfing buddy and the manager at their local bank. I hadn't spoken to him in years. James, how's my favorite number cruncher? He chuckled, like we were still close. I kept my tone cool. Hey, Stan, what can I do for you? Well, your folks are a little concerned, he said, the forced cheer bleeding into something heavier. There's been some hiccups with their mortgage payments. Something about your name being removed from the auto draft. I leaned back in my chair. My apartment was quiet, clean. The hum of the refrigerator felt louder than usual. I revoked my authorizations. I said plainly, a pause, then, well, they didn't see that coming. That makes two of us. Another pause, longer. James, Stan said slowly, like he was stepping onto thin ice. I get that you're upset, but cutting them off completely, that's pretty harsh. They're still your parents. No, I said. Sharper now, they were my responsibility. And now they're not. Stan exhaled. You know your dad, he's proud, he won't say it, but this is hitting him hard. Good, I thought, but I didn't say it. Instead, I just replied, he should have thought about that before sending that text. And then, just before hanging up, I added, by the way, Stan, this isn't about punishment, it's about peace. Mine. Later that night, I received an email from Vanessa, my brother's wife. Subject line, let's be civil. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short message. James, I know things got awkward, but family is family. Let's not make this bigger than it is. You're welcome to stop by the house sometime and talk. Stop by their house, the one I helped them buy, with the kitchen I remodeled, the nursery I furnished. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Michael. 2 days later, I stood outside the lake cabin, alone. Snow clung to the edges of the roof like icing. The wind whispered through the trees. Quiet. Knowing. I took one last walk through the place, touching the wood beams I had stained by hand. The fireplace mantle where Mom used to place those tacky ceramic reindeer. Everything felt smaller, duller, like it had already let go of me. I locked the door behind me and slid the key into an envelope, addressed it to the realtor. As I turned back toward the car, I didn't feel triumphant, I felt clean. Empty, maybe, but honest. I thought they'd get the message. I thought silence would be enough. But the thing about entitled people, they don't handle boundaries. They push back. And the way my parents and especially Mark chose to push back, well, that's when the real fire started. The silence lasted all of 5 days. That's how long it took before the real game began. It started with a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was soft, tentative, like she was calling a distant relative, not her own son. Hi, honey, your father and I wanted to talk. We miss you. Maybe we all overreacted. You know how holiday stress gets to us. Anyway, call me back. I didn't. Because it wasn't stress, it wasn't heat of the moment, it was a choice. They made a calculated decision to exclude me, and now after I cut the money, the cabin, the cushion, they were suddenly feeling nostalgic. Please. 3 more voicemails followed, then a text from Mark. Yo. Man, can we talk family dinners on Sunday? You should come. Mom's making your favorite chili with cornbread. Cornbread, like that would fix it. I stared at the message longer than I should have. My thumb hovered over the reply bubble. For a split second, I imagined it all being simple again. Laughter at the dinner table, passing the pepper, Tyler throwing mashed peas. But that was fantasy. That world never really existed. And I'd spent too long confusing obligation with love. I left the message unread. Then came the shift from charm to pressure. That weekend, I got a call from Paul, my uncle by marriage. He's married to Aunt Lisa, my mom's sister. A quiet, thoughtful guy. Served in the Navy. Retired early. Reads a lot of Hemingway. We always got along. Hey, kid, he said, you got a minute? I sighed, for you always. He chuckled. I heard things are tense. That's putting it nicely. There was a pause. I'm not calling to guilt you, he said, but your dad's been on edge. Said you're threatening to sell the family cabin? It's not the family cabin. Paul, it's mine. I paid for it. They never contributed a dime. He was quiet for a beat. Fair enough. Just, if you do sell it, let me know. Lisa and I have a lot of memories there. Would be good to walk through it one last time. His tone wasn't demanding, no manipulation. Just real? And for that, I said yes, I'll let you know. That was the first and last conversation in this whole mess that felt human. But Mark went nuclear. 3 days later, I got an email from a community zoning board. Apparently, someone had filed a complaint about unauthorized renovations at the lake cabin. I laughed out loud. There were no renovations, not in years. The last update was a deck I added back in 2019, fully permitted. Still, it meant I had to deal with a pointless inspection that delayed the sale by 10 days. I didn't even need to ask who did it. Only one person in my family had that combination of pettiness and free time. Mark? So I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I emailed him back. Subject: seriously. Body: you filed a zoning complaint. If you're going to play games, at least be good at them. This won't stop anything. It just makes you look desperate. Grow up. James. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was him. I picked up. His voice was sharp, sarcastic. Well, look who decided to remember he has a brother. No, I just remembered you're a child. Oof, harsh, he said, mocking hurt. What happened to family over everything, huh? You happened. I shot back. You and your entitlement, you and your little victim routine all these years. I gave, and the second I stopped suddenly, I'm the villain. You are the villain. Man, he snapped. You bailed on the people who raised you, funded your education, gave you everything. Funded. I nearly laughed. You think they funded me? I worked 3 jobs through college. Mark, I got scholarships. They didn't pay for a dime of my tuition, but nice revisionist history. He paused. Then, softer. Look, I didn't mean for things to go this way. Vanessa just wanted a quiet Christmas. It wasn't personal. It was always personal, I said coldly. You just never noticed because it didn't affect you. And then I hung up. For good. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly, like the blades were trying to hypnotize me into forgetting. But I didn't forget. I remembered everything. The time I paid Mom's ER visit and she told the church she handled it with savings. The way Dad introduced me as our son in finance but never once asked what I actually did. How Mark crashed his second car and I footed the insurance increase. And not once a single thank you. Not even when I bought them the house. That's when I realized what hurt the most. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the rewrite. How they'd taken my generosity and erased it from the story. Turned my sacrifice into their birthright. 3 days later, I got a certified letter in the mail. Inside was a cease and desist from a lawyer representing Mark and Vanessa. It accused me of disrupting family stability by threatening to liquidate assets tied to family heritage. It was ridiculous, I laughed, out loud. But I also felt something else: rage. Not hot, yelling in the street rage. No, this was colder, more focused, like a knife made of ice. They were playing legal games now. Okay. They wanted a war. Fine. I called Michael. Can we escalate this, I asked. Define escalate, he said evenly. I want a formal notice sent, full financial disengagement, list every dollar, every account, every asset, with dates and paper trail. Like a bill? No, I said, like a history book, one they can't rewrite. Michael paused. Done. The file took 3 days to compile. When it was done, it was 37 pages long, line by line, year by year. Receipts, transfers, invoices, property tax payments, trust allocations, even grocery reimbursements I'd long forgotten. It was brutal, precise, undeniable. And it was about to become the blueprint for the fall of my family's fantasy. Because if they wanted to play court, I was ready to play God. I still remember the sound my printer made page after page, feeding out like a low hum of justice. 37 sheets, heavy with ink, light with regret. Each line a quiet scream, this is what I gave, and this is how you erased me. Michael had labeled it cleanly: James Ellison vs. Emotional extortion. 12 years of financial contribution. It wasn't just a document, it was an obituary for the version of me who thought love could be bought and gratitude was guaranteed. We sent it by courier, signature required. 3 copies. 1 to my parents, 1 to Mark and Vanessa, and 1 to Stan at the bank for transparency. As Michael put it, I knew exactly what that meant. I wasn't just drawing the line, I was etching it in stone. That same night, I sat in my living room with a bottle of red and my old notebook, the one I hadn't touched since I first bought the cabin. It still had the doodles I made while dreaming of summers by the lake. One page was titled Legacy Plans and included a list of people I wanted to pass the cabin down to. Mom, Dad, Mark, maybe Tyler one day. I scratched all their names out with a black pen, not with rage, but with resolve. Then I flipped to a blank page and wrote, Legacy starts with boundaries. The next morning, I got a call, unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. It was Paul. James, he said, his voice unusually tense. I just left your parents' place. You might want to brace yourself. I paused. What happened? They opened the document. And Paul sighed. Your dad's furious. Says you've turned on the family. Your mom's crying. Mark, he stormed out. Vanessa's playing innocent. Of course. I didn't respond. Then Paul added quietly, but between you and me, that document, you did the right thing. Someone had to pull the curtain back. The fallout came in waves. First, I got an email from my mom. Subject: why would you hurt us like this? It was 4 paragraphs of emotional word salad blame disguised as pain. No accountability, no apology, just a list of her feelings. How I'd embarrassed them. How I'd humiliated the family in front of others. How they never asked for anything. She even wrote, you gave because you wanted to. Now you're weaponizing it. That's not love. I read it twice, then I forwarded it to Michael and said, file this under Exhibit B. Meanwhile, the cabin sale moved forward. I'd instructed the agent to list it discreetly, no signs, no public showings, just quiet, targeted offers. Within a week, we had 3 serious bids. One came from a young couple from Milwaukee. They just had a baby and dreamed of raising her by the water, fishing on weekends, bonfires in July. They reminded me of me. Before all this, I accepted their offer, full price, all cash. I signed the papers that Friday. By Monday, the cabin would be legally theirs. On Sunday, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, there she was. My mother, wrapped in a long beige coat, eyes swollen, hands shaking. Hi, she said softly, like we were still something we weren't. I didn't invite her in. She glanced down at her hands, then back at me. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe. We're talking. Tears welled in her eyes. I know we made mistakes, but this is too far. James, selling the cabin, that place meant something to all of us. You mean the place I bought? The one you never paid a dollar toward? She winced. It was ours in spirit. I blinked slowly. No, Mom. You treated it like it was yours in convenience. Not once did you ask what it cost me, not just financially, but emotionally. She took a shaky breath. We raised you. We gave you a life. Don't we deserve some grace? That was the moment, the final straw. I stepped out, closing the door behind me. Now we were standing together in the hallway, eye to eye. You gave me life. Yes, I said, but I spent most of it earning my spot in a family that never made room for me unless I was paying for dinner. She shook her head, tears falling now. You're being cruel. No, I said quietly. Cruelty is forgetting your son's existence until you need something. This is clarity. She opened her mouth to argue. I held up my hand. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a key. The cabin key. I placed it in her hand. Her eyes lit up. But before she could say anything, I whispered, It's no longer mine. The new owners move in tomorrow. Her face fell, like the ground dropped beneath her. I just thought, she stammered, maybe we could fix this if we still had it. No, I cut in. We lost that a long time ago. The cabin didn't break this family. You did, all of you, piece by piece. She clutched the key like it meant something, but it was just metal now. Just memory. I stepped back, and I closed the door. That night, I slept better than I had in months. But peace is never permanent, not when the people you cut off are addicted to control. Because the next day, Mark showed up. And this time, he wasn't here to talk. He came with an envelope. And inside it was a lawsuit. The knock came at 9:03 a.m., sharp, deliberate, impatient. I opened the door expecting a courier. Instead, it was Mark. Suit jacket too tight, jaw clenched so hard I could hear his molars grinding. In his right hand, a manila envelope. He didn't say hi, didn't ask to come in. Just thrust the envelope forward like it was a live grenade. "You brought this on yourself," he muttered. Then he turned and walked away. I didn't open it right away. I just stood there, envelope in hand, the silence in my apartment suddenly louder than traffic outside. Then, slowly, I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I used to do their taxes, plan their vacations, research preschools for his kid, and opened it. Inside, a petition for financial restitution, filed by Mark and Vanessa. Their claim: that the cabin was gifted with the mutual understanding of shared family use, and that my liquidating it violated an implied trust. They wanted half the sale. Half. For a property I bought in full, maintained, paid taxes on, and which they treated like a hotel. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. But I did neither. I picked up the phone and called Michael. 2 days later, we were in his office. Legal pads stacked high, coffee gone cold, fluorescent lights buzzing above like the wings of some sadistic insect. He was reading the petition with surgical focus. Finally, he looked up. "This is weak," he said, "legally. They don't have a leg to stand on." Then why does it still piss me off so much? Michael chuckled, a dry sound, "Because this isn't about money. James, it never was. This is about control. They're hoping you'll settle just to make it go away." I leaned back. My shoulders were stiff. My jaw had been tight for days. "I don't want to settle," I said. "I want to burn it down, all of it." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Careful. That's an expensive kind of catharsis." "I don't care anymore. I've spent 12 years funding their fantasy. They turned around and tried to rewrite history. Now they're trying to cash in on a property they never owned." He nodded. Then we counter hard. The next week was a blur of emails, filings, sworn affidavits. Michael moved fast, relentless, efficient. We responded to the lawsuit with an itemized ledger of every financial contribution I'd made since 2011, organized by date, purpose, and account. We attached receipts, bank transfers, even texts. One of them from Vanessa read, "Thank you for paying off the rest of Tyler's hospital bill. You're a lifesaver." Dated July 6, 2018. And they had no clue I'd saved it. Every line, every receipt, was a stone in the fortress I was building, a wall they couldn't climb. But the best piece? A notarized statement from the original cabin realtor confirming that I'd paid the full amount in cash, alone, with no co-signers or verbal agreements. Michael smiled when he saw that. "This," he said, "is your nuke?" And yet, I still felt hollow. Winning felt good, sure, but it didn't fix the part of me that still wished deep down that any of this had been unnecessary. That maybe, just maybe, they would have chosen love over leverage. That hope, it had to die. The court date came quicker than I expected. Small claims, local courtroom, fluorescent lights, peeling paint, a clock that ticked too loud. Mark and Vanessa sat on the other side of the room, all faux composure. Vanessa wore that icy smile she reserved for PTA meetings and Instagram selfies. Mark looked tired, like he hadn't slept. I hoped he hadn't. The judge was a woman in her 50s, sharp eyes, clipped tone, no patience for drama. Michael did most of the talking. He was methodical, precise. Then he handed over the stack Exhibit A, James Ellison's complete financial record. Vanessa tried to object, something about implied emotional intent. The judge shut it down instantly. When Michael brought up the notarized statement from the realtor, Mark paled. It was over before it began. The judge dismissed their claim in full, with prejudice, meaning they couldn't refile, meaning it was done. Outside the courtroom, Mark approached me. No lawyers, no theatrics, just us, two brothers who once shared bunk beds. "You really hate us that much?" he asked, voice tight. I shook my head. "No, I just finally love myself more." He scoffed. "You think money makes you right?" "No," I said, "but receipts don't lie." Then I turned and walked away. Later that night, back home, I opened my inbox. There was one new message. Subject: legacy. From Paul. Inside, A simple note. I saw the court filing, I saw the receipts. You were right for what it's worth. I'm proud of you. And attached. A photo. Me, age 14, standing beside Paul on the cabin dock, holding up a fish I'd caught, grinning like an idiot. I'd forgotten that moment even existed. But he hadn't. I thought the storm had passed, that the lawsuit was the climax. But families like mine, they don't concede, they retreat. And when they resurface, they don't come for peace. They come for your name, and next, they went after mine. For about a week after the court hearing, I let myself breathe. No calls, no drama, no fire alarms in the form of urgent family matters. I went to work, hit the gym, even caught up with an old friend from college over lunch. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt like a man untethered, clean, quiet, free. But freedom, I've learned, is a fragile thing, especially when the people you walked away from are addicted to narrative. They couldn't beat me in court, so now they'd try something worse. They'd rewrite me. It started with a phone call from Ashley, my college roommate, now a regional manager for a top finance firm. She and I had stayed in touch, met up every few months for dinner and war stories. "Hey," she said casually, "weird question, but you applying for a job somewhere?" "No," I said. Frowning, "Why?" "Well, someone claiming to be a former client sent an anonymous tip to our compliance team, said you were financially abusive to your family, that you manipulated inheritance and real estate to cut out dependents." I felt the blood drain from my face. What I said, barely breathing. "Yeah," she continued. "It read like a personal vendetta. We flagged it as nonsense immediately, but heads up, it made the rounds." My throat tightened. "Do you know who sent it?" "No name, just a burner Gmail. But James, come on, I know you. You've got a pristine record. This smells like a grudge, not a whistleblower." I forced a laugh, but it didn't reach my chest. "Thanks for the heads up." "Of course, but just in case, maybe you should lock your social down." I hung up and sat in the dark for a minute. Just thinking. They weren't attacking my bank account anymore. They were going for my reputation. And in my world, finance, consulting, trust portfolios, your name is your currency. Smear that and everything else unravels. So I did what I always do when the air thins and the floor tilts beneath me. I got strategic. Step 1. Digital footprint cleanup. I removed public access to my LinkedIn, Facebook, and anything remotely personal, set Google alerts for my name, employer, and a few choice phrases like financial misconduct. Step 2. I called Michael. "You won the legal battle," he said, voice grim, "but now they've moved to guerrilla tactics. Can we go after them for defamation?" He paused. "We could, but it's murky. If it's anonymous, proving authorship is hard. But if we catch them connecting dots even indirectly, we've got leverage." "Then let's bait them," I said. Michael hesitated, then said, "Go on." Over the next few days, I posted a few vague status updates online. Not dramatic, just subtle. Big new opportunity on the horizon. Excited for this next chapter. Grateful for the mentors who helped me build something with integrity. Then I waited. 3 days later, I got an email from a contact at a private equity firm I'd consulted with. Subject: interesting voicemail. He forwarded me a transcript from their receptionist line. Somebody had called claiming to be a former colleague of mine, accusing me of fraudulent handling of shared family assets, the same phrases used in the previous anonymous tip. This time, they left a callback number. Michael traced it within hours. Guess who it belonged to? Vanessa's cousin. A 27-year-old aspiring realtor who once asked me to refer her to my network. I declined politely because she didn't even have a license yet. Apparently, that stuck. That was our proof. Indirect connection, coordinated smear, traceable back to family. Michael grinned like a man handed keys to a castle. "We're not suing," he said. "Not yet. First, we issue a cease and desist with teeth, make them sweat." We drafted the letter that afternoon, attached evidence, named names. And we sent it to Mark and Vanessa. Directly. The fallout was immediate. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Mark. This time, he wasn't yelling. He sounded scared. "Hey man, We got the letter. Look, I didn't, Vanessa, she just wanted to get your attention. We thought maybe if we stirred things up a little, you'd reach out. I didn't mean for it to get messy. Can we please just talk? I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to Michael. He filed it. That weekend, I went to visit Paul and Aunt Lisa. They'd invited me over for barbecue, something normal, human, and for the first time in a while, I said yes. When I arrived, Paul handed me a beer and didn't say anything, just nodded, like men do when they know you've been through something ugly. Later that evening, while we sat under string lights in the backyard, Lisa leaned over and said, "You know, I told your mom she was losing you, years ago." I looked at her. She said, "James is fine, he's successful, he doesn't need anything from us." Lisa shook her head. She didn't get it. You didn't need money, you needed family. I felt something twist in my chest. Because that was it. Exactly that. All these years, I hadn't been bitter about the cash. I was grieving a family that never really saw me. When I got home that night, I found a box on my doorstep. No note, just a plain cardboard box. I opened it carefully. Inside, a scrapbook. My old one. The one I'd left at the cabin. Each page was filled with photos me as a kid, birthdays, holidays, even some I didn't remember ever seeing. Tucked into the last page was a post-it, handwritten. "For whatever it's worth, we were proud of you, Dad." No signature, just that. I stared at the note until the sun came up. Was it guilt, manipulation, closure? Maybe all three. But it didn't change what came next. Because peace isn't just silence. It's knowing when to let go, and when to walk away for good. I didn't call him, didn't text, didn't respond to the scrapbook or the post-it note signed Dad. I just sat with it for a while. Sometimes a gesture comes too late, not because it lacks meaning, but because by the time it arrives, the wound it could have healed has already become scar tissue. That Sunday, I drove out to Lake Geneva one last time. The couple who bought the cabin had invited me out for coffee, said they'd found something in the attic they thought belonged to me. I hesitated, but curiosity won. When I got there, the air was crisp, pine sweet. The lake shimmered like it had no memory of anything we did on its banks. They were kind people, young, hopeful. She was holding a toddler on her hip. He wore a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, like he hadn't yet adjusted to fatherhood. They thanked me again for selling to them. "You have no idea what this place means to us," the wife said. I smiled. I did, I really did. Then she handed me a small wooden box. "We found this under a floorboard in the master bedroom closet." I opened it. Inside, a tiny glass ornament, a Christmas angel, the cheap kind you'd buy in bulk at Walmart in the 90s. And tucked beneath it, a folded piece of paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Mine. It was a note I'd written during my first winter there, apparently drunk on nostalgia and boxed red wine. "Dear future me," it began. "Don't forget this place is yours. You built it, you paid for it, and more importantly, you dreamed it into being when no one else believed you could. Let them take everything else if they must, but this is your proof that you mattered." I stared at the paper for a long while. The couple stood in silence, maybe sensing the weight of it. Then I thanked them and left. I didn't keep the box. I left it on the cabin porch, under the doormat. Let them make new memories with it. That place deserved joy now, not ghosts. Later that night, I sat down at my laptop. And for the first time in over a year, I started writing again. Not work reports, not budgets, not court filings. Just writing. Telling my story, not for revenge, not even for closure. But because silence had kept me loyal to people who only loved the version of me they could exploit. Telling the truth was how I finally let go. I self-published a memoir a few months later, didn't promote it much, just put it out there under a pseudonym. The title, The Cost of Being the Good Son. It didn't go viral, it didn't hit bestseller lists, but it found readers. And every now and then, I'd get an email that said something like, "I thought I was alone in this, thank you. Your story gave me the courage to say no." I finally blocked my sister after 20 years. It feels terrifying and free. And that's when I realized, revenge isn't always fireworks or legal victories. Sometimes it's quiet. It's boundaries. It's choosing peace over permission. It's walking away without having to explain why. I still hear from Paul. We do dinner every couple of months, talk about life, stocks, fishing trips that never happen but make us smile anyway. Mom emailed on Christmas. No apology, just a thinking of you. I didn't reply. And that silence, it wasn't cruel. It was clarity. I'm not sure what healing looks like. I think it's different for everyone. For me, it looked like no longer shrinking myself to be palatable for people who would rather keep me useful than seen. It looked like keeping my money, my time, and my energy for people who earn it. It looked like standing in front of a mirror and seeing a whole person, not just a bank account with shoes. If you've made it this far, maybe this story feels uncomfortably familiar. Maybe you've played the peacemaker, the provider, the punching bag. Maybe your kindness was mistaken for compliance. If so, let me say this clearly. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not cruel for protecting your peace. And you don't owe anyone a seat at your table just because they share your last name. So let me ask you, have you ever given so much love to someone who treated it like obligation? Have you ever been told you were too sensitive, too dramatic, when all you wanted was respect? Have you ever thought, if I don't leave now, I'll lose myself forever? If any of that rings true, drop a comment below. Tell your story, because I promise someone else reading is waiting to feel less alone. Story 2. I remember the exact moment I stopped believing I mattered to my parents. It wasn't a car crash, it wasn't a screaming match or a slammed door. It was a lukewarm plate of lasagna and 4 words from my father that changed everything. College is a waste. Not college in general, just college for me. My name's Lizzie Parker. I'm 28 now, and I've spent most of my life walking the fine line between tolerated and forgotten in my own family. And if that resonates with you, buckle up, because this story, it starts with silence but ends with a microphone that caught everything. We were sitting at Olive Garden, that sad kind of fancy where they sprinkle fake parmesan over your sadness and call it celebration. It was my 18th birthday. The waiter had just dropped off a free dessert tiramisu with a candle, and Mom was snapping a picture of my younger sister, Jessica, blowing it out. Yes, my birthday, her in the photo. Typical. I remember fiddling with my fork, palms sweaty, college brochures were stuffed in my bag, and I'd finally worked up the courage to ask, "Dad," I started, voice trying to sound casual. I was thinking of applying to state, just exploring options. Richard Parker, regional insurance exec, khaki king, master of spreadsheets, didn't even pause chewing. "College," he said finally, setting down his fork. "For you, Lizzie, it's a waste of money." He said it like he was discussing interest rates. Just a simple equation, investment return, and I was the loss column. Growing up, I was always just Lizzie, not dumb, not brilliant, just average. I loved stories, people, asking questions. My teachers called me thoughtful. I thought that mattered. It didn't. In the Parker household, value came from test scores and trophies. My mom, Diane, was a high school teacher, the kind who color-coded lesson plans and cried when students forgot APA citations. She was brilliant and terrifying. At dinner, she'd quiz us like we were on Jeopardy. I'd get half right. Jessica would finish the question before Mom even asked. Jessica, my little sister. The golden child with a golden cello and a wall full of medals. She was on high school calculus at 12, won the state science fair at 15, probably cured a disease by 16. I lost track. Her bedroom was a shrine to potential. Mine was a work in progress. I still remember Mom's favorite phrase whenever I brought home a B+. Being likable doesn't pay the bills. Elizabeth. Funny, the clients at the restaurant where I worked later on might have disagreed. But back then I believed her. Because when you're 16 and your parents only cheer for one kid, it doesn't matter how many friends you have or how kind you are. It matters who gets the spotlight. Spoiler alert, it wasn't me. Graduation day should have been a turning point. Instead, it was the warm-up act for Jessica's next big win. I wore a wrinkled blue robe and crossed the stage like everyone else. No banner, no family cheer. That night, my parents hosted a graduation party, or so the invite said. But what we were really celebrating? Jessica's National Science Fair victory. She had a ribbon, I had a diploma. Guess which one made the fridge? Aunt Amy, bless her heart, came up to Mom and said, "So, where's Lizzie off to next?" Mom took a polite sip of wine and replied, "Oh, money's a little tight right now." Tight. Dad made 6 figures at the firm. Mom had tenure. We lived in a 4-bedroom in Maplewood and took vacations to Lake Superior. Tight wasn't about money. It was about me not being worth it. So I got a job instead. Belluna was this upscale Italian place, downtown, cloth napkins, overpriced wine, the works. I started as a hostess, smiled, took reservations, wore black slacks that never fit quite right. 6 months in, I was promoted to floor manager, the youngest in their history. Why? Because apparently, being good with people did matter, just not in my family. Jessica, meanwhile, went off to undergrad with a full scholarship, 2 internships, and a research grant. We barely saw each other. Holidays were brief, phone calls shorter. 7 years passed like a blink. Then one Tuesday, the phone rang. Guess what? Lizzie Mom's voice chirped. Jessica got into medical school. Confetti practically shot through the speaker. And we're having a dinner for Dad's retirement this weekend. You'll be there, won't you? Jessica has a special announcement. A pause. She added, more softly, "It would mean a lot if you could be gracious." Translation: don't bring up the past. Don't outshine, and for God's sake, don't be bitter. I bit my tongue and agreed. Of course I would come. I always came. That was my role. Show up, smile, stay quiet. I bought a bottle of $85 brandy, Dad's favorite. And for Mom, that French perfume she used to wear when we were kids, the one that made the whole car smell like peonies and pressure. I even wrapped them in gold tissue paper, like that would help. As I pulled up to the Parker house, my stomach twisted. Same white columns, same blue hydrangeas lining the walk, same sense of shrinking. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. "Lizzie," she sang, right on time. Her hug was brief, her perfume too strong. The one I just bought her was still in the box. Inside, the house buzzed with relatives. Jessica stood near the fireplace, radiating polish and purpose, perfect blowout, tasteful dress, stethoscope practically glowing from her neck. "Lizzie," she said with a nod, "long time no see." "Hey, Jess." The awkwardness clung to us like static. Across the room, Dad sipped his scotch and nodded at me, not even pausing his conversation with Uncle Jim about tax law. Dinner was tense. Jessica shared her special news: she'd been selected for a prestigious fellowship in oncology. Applause erupted. Then Mom dropped it. "We've struggled." "Of course," she sighed dramatically, "but it's all been worth it. Jessica's brilliance deserves every opportunity." Dad nodded. "That's why we dipped into retirement and sold that old family land. 200K's in investment when it's for someone like Jessica." Silence. I stared at my plate. Half-chewed asparagus turned bitter. I looked up and said quietly, "You said we didn't have money for college." Forks froze midair. Mom cleared her throat. "Well, we have it now." Dad added, "Besides, Lizzie, Jessica's situation is different. She's special." That word, special. Like a knife, dulled from overuse, but still sharp enough to leave marks. They didn't even flinch. I drove home that night with one hand gripping the wheel, the other clutching my necklace, the old silver one Mom gave me in middle school, back when I still believed she saw me. I yanked it off at a red light, tossed it in the glove box like an apology I'd never open again. Out loud, to no one, I said, "One day, I'll make you see. I'll make you wish you hadn't picked the wrong daughter." What I didn't know yet, that day was coming sooner than I ever imagined. And Karma was already listening. Because someone else had been listening that night too. And they recorded everything. The file showed up in my inbox 2 days later. Subject line: family footage. Draft for review. Paul. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the trackpad. My Uncle Paul, technically my uncle-in-law, had been filming during Dad's retirement dinner. Said it was for a family documentary project, legacy building. He called it. He'd walked around with a wireless mic clipped discreetly to Dad's collar, catching authentic Parker moments for posterity. Guess we got exactly that. I opened the file, clicked play. And there it was. My father's voice, clear as day, drifting in over the sound of clinking glasses and Jessica's laughter. Lizzie was never a good return. You don't waste the 401k on sentiment. Then Mom chimed in. That girl was always too soft, not enough spine. But Jessica was born to win. They laughed. And something in me, something old, maybe something I had buried in my gut at 15, just snapped loose. For a long time, I thought I had healed. That time and distance could stitch up the cuts my family left. Turns out, time doesn't heal anything you're still letting bleed. I sat there in my apartment, the cheap wine I poured untouched, the bottle of Dad's brandy still in the gift bag by the door. And I pressed play again. This time, I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just listened. Cold, still, focused. Because now I had proof. Not just of favoritism, not just of emotional neglect, but of a belief system my parents held and passed down like gospel. Some children are worth the investment, others are not. And I had receipts. You see, people love to talk about the American dream like it's a ladder. Climb fast enough, smart enough, politely enough, and you rise. But what they forget to mention is, some people get a step stool. Others, they're told to bring their own damn nails and build it from scratch. My parents handed Jessica a full toolkit. Me, I was lucky to borrow a hammer. Looking back, I can see it clearly now how that hierarchy was baked into every little moment. Like birthdays. When Jessica turned 13, Mom rented out a planetarium. She gave a speech. There were matching t-shirts. When I turned 13, I got a coupon book and a homemade card with my name misspelled. Or Christmas. Jessica's gifts were always career-aligned. Lab kits, piano upgrades, once even a microscope. Mine, a set of perfume I was allergic to, and a used copy of How to Be More Organized. Subtle, sure, but intentional and cumulative. And worst of all, I kept trying to earn my place anyway. I spent most of my teenage years auditioning for approval that was never going to come. Choir solos, honor roll, volunteer hours at the senior center. I remember once, when I was 17, I made dinner from scratch lasagna, salad, garlic bread, and cleaned the house just to say thank you for raising me. My mom came home, looked around, and said, "Tool, you're clearly avoiding homework." By 20, I was married and working 2 jobs. I was managing other people's chaos and swallowing my own. But even then, I still sent Christmas cards, still brought wine to Thanksgiving, still texted, "Happy Mother's Day," even when she didn't reply. Hope is a stubborn thing. The worst part, I let them near my self-worth. I let their silence tell me who I was. Until now. Now I had the truth in MP3 format, time-stamped, backed up twice. A weapon, or maybe a key. I called Uncle Paul the next morning. "Hey," I said casually, "that family footage was really well done. Mind if I keep a copy?" He hesitated. "Of course," he said, slowly, "wasn't sure if you'd want it. Some of the audio from that night was sharp." "I know," I said, "that's why I want it." He didn't press. Paul always saw more than he let on. Back in the day, he was the only adult who didn't talk down to me. He once told me, at Jessica's high school valedictorian speech, "Don't mistake volume for value, kiddo. Quiet people tend to build the things that last." Maybe he knew what I was planning before I did. Later that night, I found the necklace. That silver chain from middle school, the one Mom gave me for courage. I'd stuffed it in the glove box after the retirement dinner, right next to the discarded receipt for the brandy I never gave Dad. I held it in my hand. So light, so useless. I stood in my apartment hallway, opened the utility drawer, and dropped it in. Not angrily, not dramatically, just finally letting go. The next day, I went to work like nothing had changed. But everything had. Balloona was bustling, dinner rush humming. I greeted regulars, directed servers, double-checked wine orders. But my mind was 10 steps ahead. Because now I had a mission. I didn't know exactly what it would look like yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to beg for recognition anymore. I was going to prove my value where they couldn't ignore it, and maybe, just maybe, I'd show them what a waste of money could really do. That night, lying in bed, my mind racing, I whispered to myself, "You don't need their permission to matter." A mantra, a declaration. But also a spark. Because once I stopped trying to belong in their world, I realized I could build my own. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Family dinner next Sunday, parents want to talk estate stuff. Hope you can make it. I stared at it. Estate stuff. I didn't reply, not yet. But something told me this wasn't just about wills and paperwork. Something was coming. And this time I wasn't walking into it blind. I showed up to that dinner with 3 things. A smile they couldn't read, a USB drive in my coat pocket, and a memory that never let me forget. It was Sunday, rain-slick pavement, trees just starting to bloom that weird Midwestern green that looks both new and exhausted. I parked across the street from the house I grew up in, not because there wasn't space in the driveway. I just needed the walk, needed the distance. Each step toward the porch felt like walking back into the same old play. Except this time, I'd rewritten my role. The door swung open before I knocked. Jessica. Right on time, she said, voice sweetened with smugness. She was wearing a muted blue blouse, the kind you see on med school brochures. Her stethoscope was nowhere in sight, but I swear I could still feel it dangling between us like a golden badge of superiority. Inside, the house looked the same. Same beige carpet, same plastic ficus. Mom insisted brightened the corner. Same wall of Jessica's achievements framed like museum pieces. My framed high school diploma still missing, I checked. We gathered around the dining room table. Dad at the head, Jessica to his right, Mom across, me at the far end, like a guest, or a witness. Mom poured wine. Jessica's been helping us think through some estate planning, she began, her voice dipped in honey and control, just in case anything happens down the road. Jessica smiled. We've been meeting with a financial advisor, and we thought it'd be wise to get everything documented: wills, accounts, long-term care directives. I nodded. Sounds responsible. Inside, my stomach coiled. This wasn't about being responsible. This was about control and positioning and ownership of people, of legacy, of narrative. Then Dad dropped the real reason we were there. We'd like to put the house into a living trust, with Jessica as the primary executor. I blinked. That makes sense, I said slowly. She's the one who still lives nearby. Jessica chimed in, too quickly, and I've already got medical power of attorney, so it just streamlines things. Of course she does. Mom added, you'll be included in the documents, of course, but Jessica's more familiar with these matters. Translation, she's the one we trust, the one we invested in. I forced a smile, took a sip of wine. Red, too sweet, like everything else in this house, polished, pleasant, performative. What they didn't know. I'd already spoken to a lawyer. Not to contest anything, not yet, but to understand exactly how living trusts worked, and to know precisely what Jessica would have access to if she became primary. Spoiler, almost everything. The conversation shifted to Dad's health, travel plans, Jessica's latest clinical rotations. No one asked about me. No one mentioned the promotion I got last month, or the team I built from scratch, or the new wine program I was leading. Because to them, my life wasn't a headline. It wasn't measurable in scholarships or fellowships or LinkedIn updates. It was just Lizzie, still quietly serving, still small. Except I wasn't. After dessert, I excused myself and walked down the hallway. Same creaky floorboards, same faint smell of lemon pledge. I passed Jessica's old room, now Mom's craft room, filled with untouched scrapbooking supplies. And then mine. Still pale yellow, still the same chipped dresser, still that dumb poster of kittens and teacups I outgrew at 14. I reached into my coat, pulled out the USB drive, slipped it into the back of the family desktop, opened the folder labeled Photos, 2011 to 2017, and quietly added one more file. Family Live Dinner Recording Wave. Dated, time-stamped, backed up. I wasn't uploading it anywhere, not yet. But I was planting a seed. I came back to the table, cheeks flushed, not from nerves, from adrenaline. Jessica was mid-story about a professor who cried during her oncology presentation. Everyone laughed on cue. I sipped my wine, smiled, and quietly thought about all the times I'd been told to be quiet, to be agreeable, supportive, grateful, even when I was being erased. That night, as I drove home, A strange sense of calm settled in my chest. Not joy, not victory, but something cleaner. Control. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving their hierarchy, I was studying it, navigating it, preparing to dismantle it. Piece by piece. And the beauty of it, they still didn't see me coming. The next few weeks were quiet. On the surface, family group chat still buzzed with Jessica updates. Jessica spoke at Grand Rounds today. Jessica got invited to shadow Dr. Liu. I'd reply with a thumbs up, sometimes a wow, proud of her just enough to stay invisible. Meanwhile, I started documenting everything. Texts, emails, past financial records, times I was told there wasn't enough for me. I wasn't collecting evidence for court. I was collecting truth for me. Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is know exactly what happened, without denial, without spin, without asking anyone else to validate it. Then came the trigger. A message from Mom. Jess told us you've been under a lot of stress at work. If you ever need a break, we're happy to help, but maybe take some time to consider what your next steps are career-wise. Career-wise. I managed an award-winning restaurant floor, oversaw a staff of 30, handled $100K in wine sales last quarter. But because I didn't have a white coat and a stethoscope, I was still a phase. I stared at the message, then opened the audio file. Lizzie was never a good return. I closed my laptop and smiled. Because the thing about pressure, it doesn't crush everyone. Sometimes it makes precision weapons. 1 week later, I got a call from Uncle Paul. "Hey, just a heads up," he said. "I shared that dinner footage with your Aunt Deb. She's on a family history kick. Somehow, it made its way to the extended group." I froze. "What do you mean, extended group?" He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, the cousin thread, the big one, with everyone?" Silence. Then, Paul added quiet, but with something almost like admiration. "It's not my place. Lizzie, but if you're the one who leaked it, you're not wrong to let people hear how things really are." I didn't leak the file. But maybe I left the door open. Maybe I didn't log out of the family computer. Maybe I labeled the file just clearly enough. Maybe I knew my cousin Tessa, the amateur genealogist and serial forwarder, would accidentally click it. And maybe that wasn't an accident at all. Because within 48 hours, everything changed. The fallout didn't come as a fireball, it started with a ping. Group text, family thread, cousin Julia, the lawyer in Chicago. "Hey, was that Dad's voice saying Lizzie was a bad investment? Yikes, I thought that recording was a joke at first." Then Uncle Dan. "What the hell, Richard? You talk like that about your own daughter?" Silence from my parents. Then Aunt Deb. "I always wondered why Lizzie seemed so distant. Now I know." Each message felt like justice breathing. For years, my parents had curated this image of the perfect nuclear family. Jessica, the shining star, me, the grateful shadow. But now, behind-the-scenes audio was exposing the rot behind the wallpaper. And I wasn't the one setting it on fire. Jessica called me at 11:34 that night. No greeting, just venom. "Did you release that recording?" I sat in bed, calm. "No," I said truthfully, "but I didn't delete it either." "You're ruining everything." That made me laugh. "Jess, I didn't ruin anything. Dad and Mom just said what they really think. Maybe you're just mad people finally heard it." A pause, then her voice shifted cold, surgical. "You always wanted attention. Congrats. You finally got it." That's the thing about people like Jessica, they think silence equals weakness. They think a quiet sibling stays quiet forever. What they don't realize is when you're raised by wolves, you learn how to bare teeth in the dark. The next morning, I brewed coffee with a strange clarity. Not rage, not revenge, clarity. Because now I knew two things for sure. My parents would never see me as worthy, not because I wasn't, but because they needed a failure to make Jessica's success shine brighter. And I was done auditioning for a role I never wanted. So I did what I do best. I made a plan. No fire, no chaos, no screaming. Precision, quiet, long game. I started by scheduling brunch with Aunt Deb. She was one of the few in the family who always treated me like a person, not a placeholder. We met at a small cafe near the lakeside neutral ground. She greeted me with a long hug and a longer sigh. "You don't have to explain anything. she said, holding my hand. I want to, I replied, not for defense, for direction. Over pancakes and 2 sweet lattes, I laid it out. Not a sob story, a strategy. How I plan to step away from the Parker family ecosystem, not in a dramatic, bridge-burning way, but in a surgical removal of dependency. I'm opening a wine bistro, I told her. Small, local, my own name on the door, not theirs. Her eyes widened. You're serious? Dead serious. I've got half the funding. I just need a partner who believes in people over pedigree. She didn't hesitate. I'm in. I blinked. That easy? She shrugged. You've been underestimated long enough. I see your worth. Lizzie, always have. And that moment was more healing than any apology my parents could ever fake. Next, I approached Paul. He met me at the park with his ever-present camera bag slung over his shoulder. He smiled when he saw me. I figured you'd call. You still shoot short-form business promos, I asked? For people I like. That afternoon, we filmed a promo video speaking about resilience, about hospitality, about building something real from being left out. He edited it that night. I uploaded it the next morning. Within a week, I launched The Other Daughter, my soft-open wine bistro. Tagline: because not every legacy is inherited. It went viral. Not because of the drama, I never named names, but because women, especially saw themselves in me. The second best, the overlooked, the underestimated. I built a business on their backs on truth. Meanwhile, the Parkers were unraveling. Extended family dropped out of birthday events. Jessica's spotless image now slightly chipped. Word got around at the hospital. Students whispered. Residents raised eyebrows. Turns out even golden children have glass reputations. Then came the kicker. I got a letter? Handwritten, slanted cursive, from my mom. Elizabeth, this has gone far enough. You've humiliated us, hurt Jessica's chances. Your bitterness is poisoning this family. We only ever wanted what was best. You've made yourself a victim. End this now, or don't bother showing your face again. No apology, no ownership, just control dressed in guilt. I folded the letter, slid it into my journal. Not to reread, but to remember. Because here's the thing. They raised me on silence, but silence, when chosen, isn't weakness, it's strategy. That week, I hosted my first private tasting event. Intimate, elegant, 4 courses, 5 wines, 15 seats, all sold out. Halfway through, a woman stood up, maybe late 50s, graying curls and bright eyes. She said, I saw your video. My parents paid for my brother's grad school, but made me waitress through community college. Thank you for naming it. We hugged, we cried. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every girl made to feel like a footnote in her own life. And still, I hadn't gone for revenge. Not really. But that was coming. Because Jessica was about to find out when you climb on someone else's back long enough eventually, they stop carrying you. And fall. Fall hurts more when you're not expecting it. It started with an email. Subject line: formal review, conduct inquiry, confidential from the Office of Professional Standards at the hospital where Jessica worked. At first, I thought it was spam, then I saw the body of the email. A complaint has been filed regarding unprofessional statements made by Dr. Jessica Parker, captured during a private family event. Please review the attached recording and be advised this will be escalated for formal review. Attached was a copy of the now infamous family dinner audio, the same one Jessica had dismissed as taken out of context. Except now, it wasn't circulating through gossipy cousins, it was sitting on an ethics board's desk. And no, I didn't send it. But I knew who did. Uncle Paul texted me 5 minutes later. You didn't hear it from me, but when people record things in public, sometimes those things find their way into HR. I stared at the screen, my heart pounded, slow and deep, like a warning bell. Because this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was institutional consequences. And for someone like Jessica, whose entire identity was built on professional perfection, that kind of scrutiny was pure kryptonite. 2 days later, the family group chat exploded. Mom, who sent that file? Jessica's under investigation. Dad? This is libel, defamation, we will take legal action. Jessica. Lizzie, you crossed a line. I didn't reply, I just read slowly, calmly, and sipped my tea. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then a voicemail. Hi, this is Dr. Elaine Nguyen with Internal Affairs. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the audio clip in circulation. Please call us back at your earliest convenience. And that's when I realized, my silence had become its own kind of language. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't threatening. I was simply not protecting them anymore. But before I called back, I did something I'd never done before. I booked a therapy session. A real one, not a self-help podcast, not journaling, an actual licensed therapist. Because the deeper this thing went, the more I knew. Revenge without healing just becomes another cage. Her name was Carla. Office smelled like lavender and old books. She had soft eyes and a sharper voice than I expected. So, she asked, after I explained the gist, what does winning look like to you? The question caught me off guard. I had spent so long surviving that I hadn't really pictured the other side. I guess, not needing them to be sorry anymore, I said, just knowing they don't get to define me. She nodded. That's not revenge. That's reclamation. Still, let's be honest, revenge did taste pretty sweet. Especially when, the following week, a hospital press release quietly stated that Dr. Jessica Parker was on temporary leave pending internal review. It didn't name the clip, but people talk, staff whisper, reputations stain. And Jessica, she called me again. You think this makes us even, she snapped. No, I said, I think this makes us honest. Her silence was thick. You built everything on being the good daughter. Jess, I added, you don't get to be cruel in private and expect to stay untouchable in public. Her voice cracked, just a little. I didn't ask to be the favorite. Lizzie? No, I said, but you used it like currency, and now the bank's closed. Meanwhile, the other daughter was thriving. We added lunch hours, local press picked us up, an article ran in the Independent Post. From family outcast to wine maven, how Lizzie Parker built a business out of betrayal and became a voice for the overlooked. And my inbox flooded. Hundreds of messages from strangers, mothers, daughters, sons. I was always the forgotten one too. Your story gave me permission to stop explaining myself. You made me feel seen. And that, more than any audio file, was the real victory. Still, one final twist remained. A week before my parents' 35th anniversary party, a party I was not invited to, I got an email. From Jessica. No subject line. Just this. They're rewriting the will. You're being removed. They're leaving it all to me. I just thought you should hear it from me first. No apology, no justification. Just her, still clinging to the one thing she thought made her superior access. But she underestimated me, again. Because by then, I didn't want anything from them. Not the money, not the house, not even the acknowledgement. My legacy wasn't in their papers. It was in every person who walked into my bistro and saw themselves in my story. So, I replied, thanks for letting me know. Tell them I said congrats, and don't forget to check under the family computer's photos folder. Might be more truth tucked in there. The night of their anniversary, I hosted a tasting event. Same night, different universe. My guests toasted to resilience, to second chances, to daughters who plant vineyards in soil meant to bury them. One woman, a quiet older lady named Joan, raised her glass and said, to the ones who didn't get picked, we picked ourselves. And in that moment, I didn't feel like I'd lost anything. I felt free. But the story's not over. Because what I didn't know, as we toasted and laughed and poured another round, was that a letter was already on its way. Certified mail, thick envelope. And when I opened it, what I found inside would turn everything I believed about winning upside down. The envelope was heavy, literally and metaphorically. Thick cardstock, certified mail, my name written in cursive I hadn't seen since childhood. Return address, Paul Hendricks, Minneapolis. MN. My uncle. The man behind the camera at every family barbecue. The one who quietly filmed the infamous dinner. And more importantly, the only adult who ever saw me as more than Jessica's footnote. I sat at my kitchen table, fingers trembling slightly, and slid my thumb under the flap. Inside, a trust revision, signed, notarized, filed, and stapled to it was a title deed. To the cabin. Our grandfather's lakeside cabin. The one we spent summers in as kids. The one that Jessica used to brag would be hers because she'd keep it in the family. The one I stopped visiting after Mom told me. That place is better suited to people who understand responsibility. I stared at the document. Grantee, Elizabeth Marie Parker. Grantor, Paul Hendricks. It was real, legal, binding. Paul called that night. His voice was calm, low, and not the least bit apologetic. Your grandfather always wanted you to have it. I just kept it quiet while things played out. But after the dinner and everything, since I figured it was time, you've earned more than silence. You've earned your own space. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But instead, I whispered, thank you, in a way I never had to my parents. Because gratitude is different when it's not demanded, when it's born of genuine care. He added gently, don't let what they did define what you build. Lizzie, this is your clean page. That weekend, I drove up to the cabin. Alone. It was still there, tucked between tall pines and wind-laced silence. The porch creaked in the same spot, the screen door stuck at the top. Inside smelled like cedar and memory. There was the old chessboard, the hammock where Jessica pushed me off once and said, it's not made for second place. I dusted off the windows, lit a candle, breathed. Then I opened the small jewelry box I kept in my bag, the one with the gold necklace Mom gave me when I was 12. Then took back 2 years later saying, you weren't careful enough. I'd kept it anyway. Hidden for years. Now, I laid it on the mantel. Not to cherish. To let go. Back in the city, the waves kept rolling. Jessica was put on extended leave from the hospital. Not fired, but her application for a coveted fellowship was deferred pending review. In other words, blacklisted without the paperwork. Mom went silent. No calls, no emails, just a single message through my aunt. She knows what she did. Except she didn't. Or maybe she did but refused to face it. That's the funny thing about parents who play favorites. When the illusion breaks, they'd rather lose the mirror than look into it. Dad finally called. One Tuesday morning, while I was stacking wine crates. Lizzie, he said, this has gotten out of hand. I wiped my hands on my apron. You mean the truth? He exhaled hard. You always had a flair for drama. No, Dad, I just stopped pretending your version of love didn't cost me everything. A pause, then, we never meant to hurt you. That line so tired, so convenient it made me laugh. You didn't mean to, I said, but you meant everything else. You meant to ignore me. You meant to fund her and not me. You meant to call me a bad return. More silence. Then, the softest tremor in his voice. I didn't know you heard that. You didn't care who might. We didn't reconcile, not really. He offered to talk things out over lunch. I declined. Because closure isn't something you receive. Sometimes, it's something you write yourself, with a steady hand and no need for their pen. At the other daughter, I added a new wall painted deep burgundy. I called it the legacy wall. Customers could pin up Polaroids, notes, photos of people who'd underestimated them, names they'd risen above, stories they'd rewritten. Within 2 weeks, it was full. Mothers holding wine glasses with eyes gleaming, daughters laughing under twinkle lights. Even a father and son who both wrote, we chose each other. We held story nights, gave away bottles named after grandmothers who weren't perfect but tried, and every toast carried the quiet rebellion of people who refused to be footnotes. Then, one quiet Thursday night just before close, Jessica walked in. Alone. Hair tied back, no makeup, no posture of superiority. She didn't order anything, just stood at the bar and said, it's beautiful, this place. I nodded, thank you. She looked around, then back at me. I lost everything, she said. I didn't flinch. No, I said gently, you just lost the story where you always won. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She opened her mouth to speak again, then stopped, just placed a small envelope on the bar and walked out. Inside, a photo of us, age 7 and 9, both in mismatched swimsuits, holding popsicles on the cabin dock. On the back, her handwriting. I don't know if this fixes anything, but you deserved more. I see that now. I didn't reply. Because sometimes, the truest healing isn't a reunion, it's the recognition that you don't need one. You are whole, with or without them. The next weekend, I drove to the cabin again. This time, not to escape, to stay. To breathe in pine air, to watch the lake shimmer. And maybe, one day soon, host retreats for women like me. The other daughters, the resilient ones, the ones who learn to plant roots in rocky soil. Because here's the truth, no one tells you. You can grow a forest out of the ashes of being overlooked. If I could go back and speak to my 16-year-old self, the version of me clutching community college brochures while Jessica paraded her Yale acceptance letter, I'd tell her this. They're not better than you. They're just louder right now. And that silence you're sitting in, it's not a void, it's a womb. Now you're not being ignored, you're being shaped, sharpened, prepared to carry what they won't. It's funny, you know? I started this story thinking it was about revenge. About giving my parents and Jessica a taste of what they served me for years: dismissal, erasure, condescension. And yes, there was a thrill in watching their empire crack, in seeing my name in bylines and hearing customers whisper, "That's her Lizzie Parker, the one who made it anyway." But that's not the part that stuck. The part that stayed with me, it's the way people showed up. The emails from strangers, the notes pinned on our legacy wall, the quiet nods across the tasting room from women who had never been seen. See, my parents thought they were protecting an image. That letting Jessica shine meant someone else had to fade. That if they invested in her, the family would rise. But here's the lesson they never learned. A family isn't a stock portfolio. It's not about who yields the highest return. It's about who stays when the spotlight dims, who listens when the narrative turns ugly, who holds space for voices they don't understand. I used to think I had to earn my place, to prove I was worthy of their attention, their pride, their love. But now I realize some people will never give you what you deserve. Not because you're not enough, but because their definition of enough is broken. And that's not yours to fix. Let me tell you what healing actually looks like. Not a big movie moment, no orchestra swelling. It looks like standing behind the counter of your own wine bar, slicing oranges for sangria, laughing with a customer who reminds you of your aunt. It looks like saying no to the family group chat and yes to a hiking trip with the chosen family who helped paint your back patio. It looks like deleting voicemails without guilt. It looks like rest. Unapologetic, earned, sacred rest. And the truth is, Jessica may never fully apologize. My parents might go to their graves believing they were doing their best. And I've made peace with that. Because here's what matters. I broke the cycle. I stepped out of the story that was written for me, and I wrote my own. The other daughter now has 2 locations, one in the city, one by the lake. And soon we're starting a podcast. Not for drama, for daughters. To tell the stories that were interrupted. To speak the names that were whispered only in therapy rooms. To shine light on all the second-borns. Overlooked sons, quiet nieces, and black sheep who dared to grow anyway. And if you're still watching this, maybe you are one of us. Maybe you've been passed over, overlooked, undervalued. And maybe you're carrying that heavy ache of, what if I'd been believed in? So let me tell you, you are not alone. You are not broken, and you are not done. Because sometimes the ones who were forgotten become the ones who remember everything. Last month, I visited the cabin again. This time with Carla, my therapist turned friend. We hosted a retreat, 8 women, all in their 30s and 40s, all with their own Jessica stories. We drank wine, we swam in the lake, we burned old letters. One woman brought her childhood ballet shoes and threw them into the fire. When I asked why, she said, "They only clapped for me when I danced like someone else." We all cried. And then we danced again. This time barefoot. This time for ourselves. As for the gold necklace Mom took back, it hangs in a shadow box behind the bar. Below it, a quote I carved on wood with my own hands. Not everything you inherit is meant to be kept. Some things are meant to be outgrown. To every person who's ever asked, why wasn't I enough for them? Here's the truth. You were, you are, and you always will be. They just weren't enough to hold that kind of light. And if you stayed until now, thank you. This story wasn't just mine. It was yours, it was ours. And if it moved you in any way, if it made you feel seen, understood, or just a little less alone, please like this video, leave a comment below what's your other daughter's story, and subscribe. Because this space, this channel, it's for the ones who were told they were too quiet, too emotional, too much, too plain, and turned all of that into power. You don't have to win their approval. You just have to stop waiting for it. Because your life was never theirs to validate. Now, if you'll excuse me, there's a new shipment of wine in the back, and a bistro full of other daughters waiting to be celebrated.